Hey everyone, welcome to the TapsTrades channel where I help keep you up to date on all things Ecomi, Veve, and the NFT crypto space. Today I have two special guests today to help enlighten us all on an area that I'd say I don't really touch on enough, and that is of course comic books and Veve NFT comics. So help me in welcoming the comic book experts themselves, fellow Veve nerds and content creators, Sean and Spencer of the Comics and Crypto podcast.
Hey, hey, Taps.
What's going on? Thanks for joining me, gents.
Of course, thanks for having us. This is awesome.
Yeah, and shout out to everyone who's hopping in here on the stream. Please hit that like button, hop on Twitter, retweet the post. Let's get as many people in here because some of the knowledge that they're going to be giving us is much more vast than what I know in comics, and especially the fact that they were able to call pretty early just how well the comics were going to do, I think is great insight. And so they're going to be kind of going through some of the physical versus digital and getting into it today on what we've seen in Veve. So before we do that, I was sharing with them just a second ago that we actually had the chance to, at least me and Spencer had a chance to meet at DCon where we had a few drinks and with the fam and was getting after it.
That was so much fun, Taps.
Oh, man, I can't wait for the next one. I think that was really cool to just like meet everyone and see everyone. So, and I'm happy that this is my last interview of 2021. You guys are the wrap up for the year.
Hey, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and let's see, we've got a few people I see in the chat who are a bunch of regulars. Shout out to Lori, Ryan, what's going on? Appreciate all you guys hopping in here. And we will be taking questions from the fam intermittently. I've got some questions to kind of get through that I've kind of laid out because I think they're going to be really good because they're going to be showing us content directly on here that they've created that is really, really cool. And I'm really happy to show it. Thank you for the super chat, Randy. Smash the like button for all our heroes up there. Thanks, Randy. Appreciate you, homie. So shout out to everyone in here. But, let's start with the first question, which is you're both avid physical collectors. I mean, you guys are straight up like king nerds, which is great. I love it. I'm a king nerd too. But I know you guys are avid comic book collection. So I guess how extensive is your comic book collection and do you collect other things?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, collecting, man, I started when I was like 8 or 9. I used to buy Beckett's. I don't do Taps. Do you remember Beckett's at all for like sports cards?
Oh yeah.
For sports cards, yeah. So I was evaluating the comic cards every month and buying based on speculation how players were doing, and I was determining, okay, this Mark McGwire is going for his home run record. I better get his rookie card, and sure enough, 10x. And I started making, I wasn't realize I was making investments as a 9-year-old.
When you were a kid, you were throwing out Holy Grails and blue chips.
It was crazy. And then Spencer and I met, and Spencer, do you want to go in your background, or do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, like my physical collecting background, I started back in elementary school. I collected Yu-Gi-Oh cards. That was my big thing. Loved Yu-Gi-Oh. Loved the TV show. I had the blade arm thing that you could play with. I had all the stuff. So I was making decks, and I was actually like playing with the cards too. So I would like enter tournaments as well, like at like local card shops. So yeah, that was like kind of like my first, and I did a little Pokemon cards as well. But then I really stopped collecting for years until I discovered NFTs in 2018. So that's kind of where my collecting journey kind of restarted again.
Nice. So you're very experienced in NFTs then as well. So kind of curious, how extensive is your comic book collection, like both of you though? Because I know I've gotten a free comic from Sean, so I know, and he has stuff all over his wall. So I guess like how, I don't even, it's fair to ask like how many comics you have or how extensive it is.
I mean, I just started collecting comic books way more recently than Sean did. I started back in April. So April 1st is when I bought my first comic. And that was Secret Wars #1. So Sean got me into investing in comics pretty recently. So Sean and our backstory is we actually met backpacking in Europe in a hostel in Prague back in 2017. Nice. And we just hit it off, became really close friends, ended up being in Berlin at the same time too. And we just kept in touch over the years. And, we kind of reconnected back in, I think it was like around the very beginning of this year. And Sean hit me up and was like, hey, like, that thing that you told me to invest in like 3 years ago, Engine Coin. It's fucking, it rocketed. So
dude,
truly rocketed. Yeah. From like 5 cents to like $3. Yeah. So we basically just like started talking every day, about crypto and NFTs. And then Sean was like, hey, like I've been investing in comics for a while now and I've done really well. You should check this thing out. So that's kind of why,
And
I eventually got into it.
Yeah, we're just exchanging information, teaching each other crypto and comics. Like, really, that's crazy. And and when we found out about Veve, I mean, that was man.
And that's the question I have too. Is that like,
Yeah.
did you find Veve once the comics became a thing or were you already collecting collectibles before that?
Yeah, I mean, so I was on the app a little bit earlier. So I think Nightwing, I think that was my first drop. So that was the first one that I got. And
real quick, I wanted to say, just sorry to interrupt, but also, hey, just so people know, if you're not subscribed to Comics and Cryptos podcast on YouTube, they also are on Spotify and Apple. I mean, they make great content, very much specific towards comics, and it's great. So I would check out them on Twitter, check them out on YouTube, and we'll be going through some of the content that they've actually created for today to kind of go through some of the stuff they're talking about. Like, they put work into this, and we'll be getting into some of that knowledge. But sorry to cut you off, Spencer.
No,
had to give you guys a quick plug there, right? So
Thanks,
go ahead and hop into it.
Yeah. So so like I was saying, I think Nightwing was my first drop. So it's fairly early. And I was on the app for probably like a month before I actually really jumped in and actually bought anything. I was a little skeptical at first and just wasn't really sure what was going on. But I got into the first drop, and I think, it skyrocketed in price. You bought it for $80, $90, and then instantly it's worth 500 plus. And I'm like, wow, this is insane. And then I noticed something in the metadata, and it said first appearance of the character. And that got my wheels turning, because Sean had taught me first appearances are so important in comic book collecting. And then we kind of just put it together. It's like, these are official DC licensed collectibles. Like, they wouldn't just be throwing around this first appearance term willy-nilly. This has to be pretty significant. So that's kind of where everything clicked for us. And this is, back when it was just the DC collectibles, mostly, and before any of the Marvel comics came out.
Yeah. And I remember when I saw the Todd McFarlane Batman, that was the first Batman that I bought. And even at the time, I think I got it for like 250 gems. And I was like, did I really just spend $250 on that?
Yeah.
Now it's like, when you think about like 250 gems, you're like, oh, that's easy. I'll spend that like every week.
Yeah. And I remember the moment Spencer called me. He's like, hey, like, do you see the first appearance on there? Do you see the connection here? And I said, yes. And so I started doing some research, and actually I came across NFT Pirates channel about first appearances. So big shout out to Chad and his brother. And they talked about the importance of first appearances. And I was like, okay, we're onto something here. This is wild. So big shout out to them for really stamping that in our minds. So it's exciting.
Yeah. And I mean, so I got in the app like very, very early. I think like February something was like when I got in, and like everything was available. But I remember that Nightwing drop, because that was like the first time where it was the first drop in like a month or something like that, where it was so hard. And back then, like, we were just on our phones jamming for like an hour plus to try and get this thing. And I missed, and I was so angry that I didn't get it. I have it now, but like, it's crazy to think how far we've come since then. And then I think it was August or so maybe July, where we saw the digital comics come. So, everyone slept on them in the beginning. Like, you could have snapped up so many comics. I remember I got like 12 on the drop, the very first one. And people were selling them for like, $6, $7. Like, no one knew how to value them.
Crazy.
But I remember like channels like yours and the Comic Ways were kind of talking about how like these are valuable. Do not sleep on them. So, now we've seen the prices rally up. We've seen them go back down, but it begs the question, I guess, why, or do you think, and why are digital comics in NFT or Veve NFTs undervalued?
Yeah.
Sure. So a lot of reasons why they're undervalued. So, I mean, for one, because they're NFTs, they're super accessible. So it's really easy for people to use them, people to consume them, buy, trade, sell, way easier than with physical comic books, just because you don't have to deal with that in-person component of it, shipping, all that, which just makes the whole process of dealing with these just a lot more painful. So you obviously you can read them as well. There's a lot of things with these comics that they're really exciting. They're licensed by Marvel, which, I mean, we basically think that because they're licensed by Marvel, they are pretty much equivalent to the physical version, not necessarily a reproduction of that physical version. So I think that's an important distinction to think about as well.
It's super important. Yeah. And I want to say Veve did a brilliant job lumping all the mint numbers together and all the variants, because now, I mean, we can dive more into this later, but having an opportunity to have a common with a super low mint number potentially being equal in value to a secret rare, that's huge. That creates so much value for the across the board for the entire collection. And it makes the collecting these comics just that much more exciting. So there's a lot of potential there for sure.
Yeah, and another reason they're undervalued is that, frankly, not that much of the physical collecting community of comics has really discovered Veve yet, and has discovered the digital comics. Yeah, so I think there's going to be a huge wave of people that are going to enter once they once it clicks like it did for us.
They're stubborn, man.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Like, I imagine you guys are in a vast or several communities of comic collecting to get like the special deals that you get, and like, how have you reached out to some and seen like how receptive they are to really getting into this?
Yeah, I have a few mentors that I've met along the way and have really helped shape my philosophies and views on collecting comics. And they're still kind of like, yeah, I mean, I get it, but I'm still just, I'm going to stick to my old school way of collecting.
It was really funny. So I was going to say, Sean, last summer we did a road trip up to Yellowstone, and along the way we stopped at probably 5 or 6 different comic book shops just to check it out. And at every single shop, Sean was like, "Hey, comic shop owner, have you heard of Veve?" And and shows him his comics and showing it off, trying to convince him to get into it. But none of them have heard of it. It was all brand new to them.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole untapped market then, right? Is like, I mean, we've been talking about comics, but when you look at it, it's like Marvel reposting and all that. But like the actual comic gurus like yourself and like Sleeping Comics and Comic Way, like it all the actual biggest comic influencers are not in like just crowd is not really here, right? Especially since San Diego Comic-Con probably would have been where we'd have gotten a lot, but it was virtual and it just didn't have the quite same allure. So I imagine like as more conventions and more groups come in, like it's still an untapped market for us to target with this side of the collectibles.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of it's a lack of understanding, and my brother-in-law, for example, big shout out to Chad. He's a big collector. He's a big collector, and he has a lot of actual physical collectibles in glass cases. And at first he was like, no, it's not real. I don't get it. But when he did understand it, when he finally understood it and clicked, he loves it. He loves it now, and he's all in. So it's been fun. It's been fun talking about drops with him, and comic books have been coming to the app. So him and my sister, shout out to Heather.
Yeah, we had a whole big crew of us that went to LA Comic-Con a couple of weeks ago, which was super fun, including Sean's brother-in-law and his sister, and this whole group of people that this like big, I don't know, probably there's like 20 plus people in it. This Veve group chat.
all Veve people.
It's all Veve people. Yeah. So we had a group of like 10 Veve people that went to Comic-Con together, which was super fun.
And big shout out to Kevin Loader as well, our third member of the Comics and Crypto podcast. Yeah.
You guys have a crew on the podcast, which I haven't had a chance to really listen to a bunch of the podcasts, but I've watched a lot of your videos on YouTube, and so I think you guys put out great content. But a lot of the questions in the chat are around like commons versus uncommons, or the different rarities, and also do edition numbers really come into play. So I know that you guys have put together a mixture of different things on like comic ranking systems, and like how does that kind of go into play with like physical grading on comics and then like lower edition numbers for different comics on Veve?
Yeah. Do you by chance have that chart?
Which one? You got so many charts.
Sean, maybe just talk about the ranking. Well, yeah, we could talk about the ranking system first, Sean. How about we do that?
Oh, gotcha. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, the ranking system. I thought they were talking about the
grading system. Taps the spreadsheet.
This guy.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's a good reference. This is located on our link tree if anybody wants access to it.
Which is on their Twitter, by the way, right here. So like this content is something that you guys created, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So here we go.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we assess for these comics, we assess the physical value, physical scarcity, digital value, digital scarcity. Are there any first appearances? Is there any speculation on these comics? So there's a lot of things that we put into account when we assess the value of this rankings.
Yeah. And I think something that's very important is that, a lot of people in the community, they talk about scarcity being the most important thing. But for us, we think that the actual comic itself is what should really come first when you're looking at investing in these. And that's why you see even some of the books that are, more scarce lower down on our rankings list. We truly believe, because, we think that there's such a strong crossover between the physical and digital collecting worlds, that the books that are really valuable in the physical world are going to be the same books that are going to be valuable long-term in the digital world as well, regardless of scarcity.
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, even recently, I think I tweeted out about this, how Kathy Wood, who's the CEO of ARK Investments, she says that Bitcoin could reach $500,000 per coin within 5 years. And to use that assessment, she compares the market cap to physical gold, which is around $11 trillion market cap, to the market cap of Bitcoin, which would need about around that same number to reach about $500,000. So they're comparing. So these billion-dollar investment firms are comparing digital and physical gold. So why wouldn't we do the same with comics? It's just logical. It's logical to us, at least.
And when you said that, I mean, it does make sense, right? Because like, if that's how they equate with crypto to other commodities like gold, then you'd also have to consider like NFTs in its own section, but it's also then digital collectibles and comics as well. So, and actually, I mean, this is a great question from Daniel Lee, so I don't want to miss it. He says, could it be that comics are worth more in the real world because many of the mints have been lost through time, whereas all of these mints will only be lost through dead accounts, but also they could be burnt. So
exactly,
I think it's a great question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Daniel. And yeah, definitely a lot of comics have been lost over time. I mean, the perfect example is Marvel Comics #1. There's only 63 copies on the CGC census. 63, that's it. And there's, there might be some more out there. So it's safe to say there's probably less than 100 comics of physical comics in existence today. So between that and the secret rare, you're looking at 700 total editions. That's it, 700. I mean, a drop alone on Veve for 700 is pretty scarce. So yeah, it's pretty wild to think where that comic could go.
And then, so I mean, kind of looking at, you've ranked out. Do the rankings sometimes go up and down depending on their price, or do you just rank them based on what you think the value should be compared to the physical form? Like I see over here on the right-hand side, you have them listed based on the comic era. And then I think I saw, where was it? Oh yeah, ebook, Holy Grail. So how you actually align them based on how long ago they came out in the comic world, and then kind of see, okay, so is it safe to say then most Holy Grails are within that gold and the silver age, or are there some Holy Grails that could be, within the bronze or copper age as well?
So the term Grail or Holy Grail is very it's different opinionated. People have different ways of defining that different definition. But for us, a Grail comic is in its highest form worth $500,000 or more. It's incredibly scarce. It involves a first appearance of a significant character, or it's the first edition of its series. So that's how we assess it ourselves. Now that definition isn't for everybody. I mean, there's some comics that are modern age that people call grails, and that's okay. I mean, that's just your own definition. At the end of the day, collecting is your own opinion and how you want to assess your collection. So that's what's most important. But this is how we assess it, and if it works for you, then great.
Yeah, and I'll also say that our rankings here have nothing to do with the prices on the market currently. These are all where we think these are our long-term rankings, where we think which books will be most valuable long-term. And we're thinking like 2 to 3 years out once we've gotten full-scale adoption with traditional physical comic book collectors.
That's awesome. That's what I was hoping it was, because when you think about it, it's like, I mean, you can flip comics and you can flip collectibles, but if you're looking at it for like the long-term value and where it could go, you want to see where they stack up as things come in. So I'm happy to see that you guys kind of align them that way. And then Gibby asks, do you guys think it's possible for Veve Comics to overtake their real-world counterparts? Do you potentially see them overtaking them one day? So I think that's a great question, right? Because as you said, like a Holy Grail could be like $500,000 plus, and our #1 comic is anywhere between like $20,000 to $35,000 on Veve today. So
yeah,
what are your thoughts there?
If you look at Marvel Comics #1, there's only 63 copies on the CGC census. That book is incredibly scarce, and we see maybe 1-2 sales, maybe a year at most. I mean, the last sale was in September. It was a 2.0 grade, a purple label, which means it has restoration, which usually it's about half of the value of a blue label. And it sold, I think, around $125,000 to $150,000. So, and actually it's very exciting news that in January, there's going to be a 4.5 blue label of Marvel Comics 1 for sale. So we're going to see, and I fully anticipate that comic.
Are you going for it?
I'll trade my Loman Secret Rare, but it's the same. But no, I'd probably go for at least $500,000 to $1 million. I fully anticipate that. Yeah, at least.
That's crazy. And I mean, I know you have a bunch of valuable comics yourself, and I think it's incredible because you guys you've been physically collecting for so long, and I know that you have a lot of comics in Veve as well, like some of the grails and the blue chips and all that. And I think actually this is a great question as well, and it kind of goes into what you're talking about on the comic that you gave me as well. And everyone, thanks for you guys are asking bomb questions in here. I've got like questions for Sean and Spencer, but you guys are asking such good ones. I want to make sure that they get priority because you guys are asking solid ones. So please hit the like button, fam. Let people know here because you guys are dropping gold. But VVVolt asks, I would love to hear their opinions on the exclusive covers. I have one of each drop so far. Will comic collectors value them more or less in the future? So I think this variant question kind of goes into what you want to talk about on that one comic, Sean.
Yeah. So to answer the previous question, just real quick, we do think that these NFTs could take over the physical counterparts, and we'll dive more into that when we look over the grading system that we created. We'll have some examples and reasons why we think that that's very possible and likely. So for the exclusive covers, the variants are very important in the physical world. Very, very important, especially scarce ones with big comics. We'll dive into specifically that's House of Slaughter, which we'll dive into that a little bit. But I think these could do very well. Like I actually, as a fan, I saw the one that dropped today, man. That's awesome. That was super cool. The Hulk and the Thing battling it out, knowing that it's only available as an NFT. Yeah, I think it could do very, very well.
Yeah. And I think just like
it's only which cover is it?
The ultra rare.
Ultra rare cover, yeah.
I'm Common Club. I got it on the rebound, so I was like stoked. I didn't stream it, but I got it on the rebound, and so I was stoked on that. But I didn't know the ultra rare was like exclusive. And that's another good question. Is like we've seen several comic covers that are NFT exclusive on Veve. Do they have added weight than in variants?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they have some added weight just because they're a higher rarity anyway. So, that gives them a little bit extra bump up in terms of, like floor price. But yeah, I mean, I think just like collecting, like for anything, it's really up to personal preference. So certain collectors are going to really value the original common cover because that's what the original physical looked like. But then others may value, these Veve exclusive covers because they're just Veve fanboys and they want everything that's, super tied to Veve. I think it's really going to come down to personal preference. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. And then, I mean, so kind of looking at like the difference in variants from physical world to now in Veve, do you want to speak about the House of Slaughter story that you kind of told me about, Sean?
Yeah. So this is a comic that's a spinoff of Something is Killing the Children, which is a really awesome comic, actually being turned into a show on Netflix, show run by Mike Flanagan, who's a really well-known director. And he also was the showrunner for The House on Hunting Hill. And so this show, Something's Killing the Children. This is a spin-off comic of that series. The Something is Killing the Children, the first edition of that comic is a 9.8 grade, is selling for around $1,000 to $2,000 right now. It fluctuates around there. This series was released in October, and it's become the highest selling comic book by Boom of all time.
Yeah, so Boom Comics is the publisher, which is different from Marvel and DC, which is the only ones that most people know about.
Right.
Yeah. They have, so just to give you an idea of how massive Boom is and how the quality of content that they produce, Netflix signed a massive deal with them to have control over all of their IP, all of their comics. So Berserker is a comic book that was created by Keanu Reeves, and that is going to be coming to, and Matt Kind, and that's going to be a series coming to Netflix as well. He's not only is going to have a film, but also an anime of Berserker.
Really?
And
well, is it like the Berserker anime that's already out?
No. Oh no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, it's a completely different one. It's called Berserker. Yeah, and it's wild and violent and it's unreal, and it's original by Keanu Reeves. So this is awesome. But this is officially now their biggest comic of all time, which means it's very easy to presume if the show does well, this is probably going to become a show as well. A spinoff show series. So this is serious. I'm very high on that comic. I'm a huge fan of James Tynion. We had a chance to meet him in LA a few months ago. He signed the Marvel sign that that I've been bringing around everywhere.
Oh, do you have that picture? The Marvel sign is insane. If you
I'll keep telling the story
real quick. Yeah, let us know about the variant side, but that Marvel sign that you have signed is nuts.
Yeah. So when this comic's released, I have a contact over a local comic shop. And I wanted to order a lot of comics because I wanted to get the variants. So the cool thing is, the issues that you see, the abundance of issues, those are the cover. That's the cover A issue. So we bought 1,000 of the cover A issues. 1,000.
Yeah, we had like how many people did we have? Like a group of like four people, five people that went in on it.
Yeah, about 4 people. Yeah. So
yeah, 1,000 of these.
1,000. Yeah. So
Mhm.
the cool. Yeah. So this is a great tip, guys. If you are really excited about a comic and you know there's huge potential ROI there, if you can buy it in bulk, because if you buy the 1,000, since we bought the 1,000 comics, we got all of the variants for free. So if you look there, there's for example, like the one right there in the middle to the right, it's the 1 to 500 variant. So for every 500 comics of cover A sold, there's one to 500 variant
Produced. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's only as many variants produced as there are total of the, basically the A cover that are produced.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are 460,000 issues produced of cover A. So there's 920 copies in existence of that comic. And in a comic book shop, you can sell it. They sell it dollar for dollar. So that's a $500 comic right there I got for free that I could turn around and sell like that. And the best part is, so since I got 1,000, I got 1,000 to 1 variant. But actually, it's right here. Ta-da!
Wow. Yeah. Nice.
That's the 1 to 1,000 variant. So there's only 460 of these in existence. And then we got 2 of the 1 to 500s, 5 of the 1 to 200s, 10 of the 1 to 100s, 20 of the 1 to 50s, and then 80 of the 1 to 25s. And we could sell these. We could sell these if we want to, and cover all and be in the green, and basically have all the cover A's for free.
And so in the physical world, do you see that the variants are like they tend to be then higher in value, and like how does that relate then to Veve variants and their price action?
Absolutely. So that's a big thing. This is that comic collectors really value the variants for sure. So I think these exclusive covers could do very, very well for that reason over time. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the same thing. Like on Veve, you have different variant covers and each has a different rarity. And the ones with the higher rarities have a higher floor price. It's the exact same thing.
Yeah. Because even the secret rare, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so the secret rare even itself is its own variant cover, right? So
right.
Yeah.
And I always think about too, like aesthetically, how they look, and I'll get into like kind of like thinking about other utility and possibly like how they would look in the Veveverse and things like that later in this conversation. But I see a super chat, so I want to make sure that I prioritize it. So thank you, Kobe. Oop, there you guys are. Thank you, Kobe Collects. Being this early to the super chat to Veve is such a blessing. Thank you, Taps, for the content. I have a custom blind box running tonight with Todd as a pull, and I have a free blind box with your name on it. Thanks again for the Veve.
Wow.
Sweet. That's awesome.
That's
all
awesome,
right.
Kobe.
Have you guys noticed just how much like giving there has been in like giveaways and things, like just people wanting to like be a part of the community and just give away stuff? Like I think it's absolutely incredible. So shout out to Kobe and everyone else who's doing that. I mean, I love seeing this kind of stuff. But yeah, so I think that it kind of speaks to the question around the variants, and I want to get to a few of my questions too, but keep the comments coming, guys, because you guys are bringing some questions for Sean and Spencer here. But one question I did have is, I guess if you want to kind of get into the value of comics into other marketplaces outside of Veve, like what are your thoughts around it, for the rest of the NFT world, whether it's OpenSea or Immutable X? Like, of course, in the Veve app, like we're all Veve fanboys, so we now understand the value of comics, but we also have to think about when we are attracting those other, like the masses from the comic book fans, and how do you think these will do as actual NFTs outside of Veve?
Yeah, I think they'll do really, really well outside of Veve. So, I mean, once they're off the platform, if they're off the platform, I mean, in general, I think it'll just give way more awareness to comic books in general, both physical or digital, and exposure to Veve. So I think just that awareness will grow the community and just get a lot more people interested in it that aren't already, just because only so many people know about the Veve app, but you have this whole greater community that know about OpenSea and Super Rare and, all these other marketplaces that are out there. So yeah, I just think as everything grows, it'll, I think also it'll help bridge the gap for physical collectors as well, just because they're more likely to see it. So yeah, in general, I think it's going to be great for them to come off the platform. Yeah. Sean, do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of people that came onto Veve alone, they were never comic collectors. And I've talked to a lot of them, and they were pumped. I mean, I was getting messages today about physical comic books, like, hey, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? And we get as much comments and questions about physical comic books as digital, which is super exciting for us. A great assessment is Marvel Comics 1. When that comic dropped, I was a bit surprised. I thought Fantastic Four 1 was going to be the first comic to drop on Veve, because it is the first first comic from Marvel Comics. But Marvel Comics #1 was under the umbrella Timely Comics before Marvel Comics. So that was 1939. So just to give you a little bit of history on this. So 1939 to about 60 or 61, that was under Timely Comics, which you had like Marvel Comics #1, Captain America #1, and then it became Marvel Comics under Stan Lee in 1961.
Re-released?
Well, it was a new brand,
Okay.
branding. So it's a Marvel Comics. It started in 1961, and now the first issue was Fantastic Four #1. That was the first issue. So that comic is cemented in pop culture history, right? And it has a lot of historical value. It's the first appearance of the Fantastic Four. It's the first collaboration between Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Massive value there. But Marvel Comics #1 has tremendous historical value. It's an incredibly valuable book to collectors, but it doesn't have pop culture value. But a few weeks ago, I had a bit of an epiphany, and I realized it does now because of Veve.
That's fair, yeah.
Because of Veve,
we're giving it
that. Yeah, it's the first comic to be dropped as an NFT, and I can almost guarantee you, the 1% of people that came in here knew about Marvel Comics 1, maybe 1%, and that's being generous. But the 99% of users now not only know what Marvel Comics 1 is, but know the value. They understand the significance and where it can go. So, man, the potential is huge.
So is that kind of like the argument then is like, because so in your like professional comic collecting physical, world, Fantastic Four should be like, I guess, like higher priority than Marvel #1, but because Marvel Comic #1 was the first NFT on the Veve platform, like it's almost like the Todd for the comics. Is that like kind of the battle between?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's how I see it.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a battle between. I would say it'd be a mixed bag though in the physical world. Like comic collectors will say no, Marvel Comics 1's more valuable. No, people say no, Fantastic Four 1 is more valuable. But I do think Fantastic Four #1 right now is significantly undervalued because they're a little bit unknown characters. They had a couple of films. Let's be honest, they were decent at best, but they're coming to the MCU. John Watts is directing the films coming out in a couple of years, and John Watts directed the first 3 Spider-Man films, and the one that was released recently as well. And he's taking over, and he's going to be directing the Fantastic Four film, and I am so pumped for it. And when that film comes out, I presume it's going to do very well. He's going to crush it, and the popularity of these characters are also going to grow, and which means the comic books are going to go up in value, and that's speculation. This is speculation at its finest, and another safe investment, because that this comic already has significant value in the physical world, but now you have an opportunity to jump ahead of the speculation of the movie coming out. So it's yeah, I'm pumped on. As you can tell, I'm pumped on Fantastic Four. So.
Oh man, I love it. We've got fellow
sleeping.
We got sleeping in here. We've got Crypto Rain in here. We've got Veve. We've got a whole bunch of people in here. So thanks everyone for hopping in here, because I'm learning. Like I know enough about comics. I know a lot about NFTs, and I know a lot about Veve. But like this world, this side of it, for me to actually like understand more of how the physical can tie into the digital is important for me. It's just important for my subscribers. And so this is why like I really wanted you guys on, because like I'm learning as you guys are kind of speaking and kind of going into it. And so, I find it extremely valuable. And this next question.
Hey, Taps, really, before we go to the next one, I wanted to go back to that last question. I had one other thing to add about the value of comics on other marketplaces outside of Veve. I think another important component of moving them off is liquidity. So something that's very important for investors is, when you buy something, you want to know that you're going to be able to sell it whenever it's time to, offload your investment. And basically you need there to be liquidity for that to happen. And I think right now people might be concerned about the amount of liquidity on the Veve app, but once it's, wide and it's on 5-10 different NFT marketplaces and it's being traded all over the place, and there's way more liquidity there, I think we'll see a lot more investors that are going to feel more comfortable jumping in, knowing that they're going to have that exit liquidity.
That's a really good point. I mean, and when you look at other NFT platforms, like there's already other NFT comics. Like I know the Comic Way did one for Aradenia, which is selling for I think 2 Ethereum around that.
Yeah,
so it's like
cool comic.
He did a great job on all that. But then there's like Terra Virtua has comics. Like there's some other platforms going this way. And so it's still so early, but you can see the momentum catching on for NFT comics. But one thing that separates Veve from those, I mean, they're beautiful, right? Is like, you can cast them in augmented reality. Like you can actively like turn the pages, which I think is great. So like there are some comics that you can go buy in OpenSea today, but it's interesting to think about what will happen once these go on because of how many editions there are and the mint numbers and the FA and FE tags.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
But the next question from Aaron, which kind of goes into the question I was just going to ask too, is, gents, do you think we will ever get DC comics on Veve? I find it hard to believe that DC can sit on the sidelines for too long with the success of the Marvel comics. And that goes into my question, and I'm happy you asked it because I was right there, is, where was it? What other comics besides Marvel would we see or could we see on Veve that would do really well? And I highlighted like DC graphic novels. I know you talked about Boom already, but what are your thoughts on other, I guess, comics that we could see on Veve besides Marvel?
Yeah, DC. I mean, they're already in the partnership,
like, yeah, it's coming. It's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter of time.
Seething over there.
I just can't. I can't. I mean, my good Lord, they have Detective Comics 27, which is the first appearance of Batman. They have Batman #1, which is the first edition of Batman series with the first appearance of Catwoman and Joker. And they have the Grail of Grails, Action Comics #1, which to me, I mean, like that one just like head explode if that ever comes.
Yeah.
Because like that's the dream. That's the dream right there. I would be thrilled just to own a comic. That shows how significant that book is.
Yeah.
Action Comics #1. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up, but yeah. And before I get to the next,
the images, yeah.
Is it okay? I'll find it in here. And then I've seen this comic pop up a few times, or this comment pop a few times. Sean, why don't you account for certain covers that are valuable in real life in your ranking? For example, Jurjevic variant cover UF4. Guy knows comics.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So that's the cover for the Secret Rare. So that comic as a 9.8 grade is worth around $20,000. But yeah, I mean, we assess the entire collection. That's the biggest thing. I mean, the Miles Morales comic, we're incredibly high on Ultimate Fallout 4, incredibly high, especially as a modern age comic. I mean, that's a perfect example of popularity just crushing supply. And I think that one especially will do very well over time and could very well, if not very possibly, take over its physical counterpart. So, but I appreciate you bringing that up because, yeah, I mean, I know people give me a hard time about Miles Morales being so high in the rankings, but guys, there's a lot of competition. We just we just really believe in those Silver Age keys and grails. But it's, and again, it's long-term rankings. But I mean, I would not be, I'm to be very honest, I would not be surprised if Ultimate Fallout 4 surprises me. And I hope it does because it's a really cool story and the films are amazing. And if we see him in the MCU, ooh-wee. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
And this is the Action Comics that you mentioned. I mean, there's a few that you sent over to me that are like
chills,
like what we could pop. So these are ones that you think.
Oh yeah, Amazing Fantasy 15. Everybody's been waiting for Amazing Fantasy 15, first appearance of Spider-Man.
That's first appearance of Thor, first appearance of Spider-Man right here. So everyone listening, if just to make sure Amazing Spider-Man #1 is the first edition of a series. It's not his first appearance. So it's incredible. It is, it's a Grail book. It's a Grail book and it's very valuable, but it's the first edition of a series, not the first appearance of him in a comic. That's why this comic is the most valuable comic of all time to date. It's the highest selling comic. Let me clarify. It's the highest selling comic book of all time. So a 9.6 sold, I think it was in September. It sold for $3.6 million. Which I mean, it's crazy to say, right? 3.6 million, but that's like the weekly amount of NFTs selling, every week. So and when you have the opportunity to buy with cryptocurrency, man, for physical comic books, lights out. I can't imagine where these prices are going to go. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And I love how this looks very similar. And at some point on Twitter, it looks very similar to the black costume that's coming tomorrow, Thursday, the early Venom black Spidey outfit. And like he looks kind of similar to this original one. And that's gonna be like they said, extreme low edition. So I'm guessing it'll be around like 1,000 people are speculating, or maybe they heard Alex say around that
5,000, right?
Well,
I've heard 1,000.
There's a bunch of speculation out there, but we do know it's less than 10.
It'll be the lowest edition comic to date in the app. But I think it's really cool to so what you're saying is we're probably pretty far away from seeing the most valued comics on the app to date, because there's so many that we could see from Marvel. But what are your thoughts around like DC or potentially like other graphic novels, other brands of comics coming into Veve?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of potential there, especially with a boom that we mentioned. Star Wars is really big. I mean,
That's the one I'm waiting for.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Star
I mean,
Wars,
like,
that's Marvel, right?
yeah, it's under
Yeah,
Marvel,
yeah,
so it's very
yeah.
yeah.
But
Star
it's
Wars
like
is
number
huge.
2 most popular comic. Like you look at all of them, it's like
Yeah.
Spider-Man, then like a bunch of others. But number 2 is Star Wars.
Yeah, that's Star Wars, and I'm excited about Star Wars, and especially like Dozer knows a lot about Star Wars. That's not an area that I know too much about, so I'm gonna be doing a lot of research on those comics. I'm very excited about it. Very excited about it.
Awesome. And yeah, I think it's pretty like I do think like we'll probably see like DC Comics. I mean, they're just sitting on the sidelines, right? Like they let Marvel go for like how I look at it is like DC was almost like the guinea pig for Veve in general, right? Like the first collectibles we got were, DC. And so they were like the first of the game to be the guinea pig to see if this thing actually has wheels. And then Marvel was the first to see, all right, will comics do well on the app? They clearly did, right? Like it's people refer to them constantly as like a digital lottery ticket. Like every single week you get X amount of chance to try to get a secret rare, ultra rare, whatever. Even the commons, you can immediately flip for ROI. Yeah. And I think it just makes sense to see DC. I've been speculating myself. Like I'm a huge weeb, huge anime nerd, and digital manga just makes sense to me as well. So yeah. And I think it's going to be just a matter of time till we see more things outside of Marvel on the comics.
Yeah. That's a great point. I was actually going to bring up manga. My brother's really into anime and manga as well. So yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely, and we'll get into.
I think that those also bring a lot of people from foreign markets to Veve and to the whole platform as well.
Yeah, which that's the whole thing is I'm saying like anime doesn't make sense until we have localization, the ability to actually see and read the app in other languages, because manga, like I've been to tons of anime conventions, and anyone who, you see like people reading in English, you see people reading in katakana and hiragana and kanji, but like that's what's going to be huge for the app, because there's whole other markets of fans that are not tapped, right? Because English is not their first language. So I think not just the collectibles and the app itself, but also when you have that side tied in, then you could have something like digital manga as well. But we're talking about comics today. So
whenever they release anime or manga, we'll have you on our podcast. It sounds like you know a lot about that.
I might hop into a cosplay for you guys and just nerd out. I've got that big Buster sword behind me.
Do you ever go to SAC Anime?
Oh yeah, I've been to SAC Anime.
That's awesome.
I've gone to Fanime every year in San Jose, right where you are. I've been going to Fanime in San Jose since it was like not well known. Like it used to be in a different building way back before it was in the convention center. And so I've been going since like, oh man, well over a decade ago. So like big weeb. And one question I did have is, do a majority, and I do want to show your spreadsheet and get into the grading side, because I think people will find a lot of that, like aligning the grading to edition numbers and all that, and like showing that. But one other question I did have is, do a majority of the grails with comics just continue going up in value with time, like in the physical form? And how do you think that'll compare to this now digital format that we're in, right? Because like Veve's, one of the first, but there's also other platforms that have had digital NFT comic books. So I guess, will they also just continue going up in time like the physicals have?
For the physical comic books, from what I've seen and the information that I've learned, comic books have always gone up over time. They've had occasional dips, but over time they've always gone up. Here's an example, like amazing AF-15, the first appearance of Spider-Man as a CGC 9.4, sold for $454,000 back in 2016. Then it sold for $795,000 in 2020. And now it's estimated to sell for $1.4 million. So, and that's all within 4 years, $1 million profit, 4 years potentially. So yeah, there's insane potential. It's funny. The only time I ever hear people complain about selling something is real estate or collectibles, specifically comics or like Veve NFTs. So hold on to those long term, man, because I think you'll be happy in the end.
Collectibles, physical collectibles are also traditionally a really good store of value, and have traditionally done better than most other asset classes in market downturns. So in a recession, they generally hold their value a lot better than a lot of other asset classes.
I know Mark Cuban's talked about that too, and he encourages people to invest in those collectibles. Yeah,
that's a really good point. I mean, there's been a big shift over I can't remember what article I was reading, but a big shift of like what stores of like what have been some of the highest ROI or like the highest gain in value for of an asset, right? Because like everyone always thinks like stocks and always thinks gold and silver and things like that. But when you look at the gain on things like art and collectibles and comics and wine, like other things that people didn't really consider as stores of value, the numbers are insane compared to even things like gold, like normal commodities, right? And like we're seeing that now with NFTs start to catch up to these traditional stores of value. And so I think comics and in a digital form just kind of makes sense across the board.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of my, at least within the past year or so, a lot of my focus of investing in NFTs has been on licensed digital collectibles, because I think that'll translate very well over the digital space. And I think that these digital collectibles, because they are licensed with big brands like Marvel, DC, I think they will hold their value a lot better than a lot of other NFTs will if there is a huge NFT market downturn.
That makes sense to me. And you guys are getting some love from Gibby. Shout out to Gibby. He said, spoke about this earlier, but I don't think enough credit goes out to Spencer and Sean, Sleepin, and Dozer for creating a new generation of comic book collectors with their insight. Thanks, guys. And I just want to echo that, because awesome. We've all spoken about different things, but you guys are like our comic centric homies, right? So you guys bring a lot of knowledge and a lot of value with your channels and with your insight. And so, that's why I wanted to have you guys on, because I do like some of the drops. I touched on some of the comics background, but it pales in comparison to stuff that you guys know, because you've been in the physical game for so long that you can kind of relate to what's going to happen in kind of the long view of these comics in Veve.
Thanks, Taps. That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. When we started this podcast, man, I remember the day that we started, we thought about doing it was where you're all on a road trip to Yellowstone. It was me and Spencer and Kevin. And, I remember after the Spider-Man drop, I was talking to some people online, and I didn't think they really understood the things that we were thinking, or had the kind of the foresight that we were hoping that they would have. So maybe we should just start a podcast or something. We just talk about, I know comics, Spencer, crypto, and Kevin doesn't really know shit, but he's gonna, but he'll be the moderator, and he has that outside perspective and help people on this journey. And yeah, we just really want to just have fun and help people in their investments and collection. And yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. I met so many amazing people on the way, including you, Taps, and it's just been awesome.
I love it. I love the story. And it makes sense. Like if you guys are constantly talking about this, have other people listen to it, right? Like clearly people find value in it. So it makes sense.
Yeah, we were spending hours in the car talking about this on this road trip. And we're like, let's just record this. Somebody else has got to hear this conversation.
I couldn't stop thinking about it. Yeah, it was fun. We came back and just got to the drawing board. So
I love it. And thanks for the super chats, everyone. Zach R. Appreciate the great content. So people are loving it. Thanks, Lori. Love Sean. Helped me out on Facebook a few times. I think the first time I heard about your channel actually was from either Lori or from Kay. So, awesome. You guys have a lot of big fans, including myself. So love seeing some of the love come in here. And so we touched on a few times, but do you have that, do you want to speak to kind of like the relation of grading to the edition number mints with Veve?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, if you want to, that's one of the graphics. It's the one with it looks like a table of contents kind of.
Let's see.
So this is a system that Spencer came up with.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, since the very beginning of when comics started dropping, so since Marvel Comics 1, I started thinking about low mint numbers. So in general, when you're looking at investing or collecting, people want to find some kind of a way to differentiate all of the, the different things that they're investing in. So, for example, for physical comics, the way that you differentiate value is with the grading system, for the physical grading system. So what the actual quality is and, what condition that is in.
And just so everyone knows, sorry to interrupt, but so everyone knows, like when you see like that picture of Sean holding up comics and you see like an 8.0 in the corner, that's the grading, right? Like that shows it was professionally basically evaluated to see what grading it is based on its condition and a number of other factors.
Yep, exactly.
There you go.
Thank you. So like that's how you differentiate physical comics. And then like moving into NFTs, if you look at these like 10,000 avatar projects like CryptoPunks or Bored Ape Yacht Club, the way that you differentiate value is the different rarity of the traits, right? So if if a monkey is smoking a pipe or whatever, and it's only 1% of the entire collection, then it's going to be worth more than something that has a trait that isn't quite as rare. And then when you look at Veve collectibles, or really collectibles in general, or NFTs that are completely identical, where every single one is exactly the same. The only way that you really can differentiate these things is by the mint number, because it's the only thing that is different about them. So we think that's super, super significant. And because collectors and investors view it that way in other assets, they'll view it the same way here. So what we did is we lined up the the mint numbers for we created a percentage-based system for Veve mint numbers and lined it up to the CGC grading scale for physical comics. So for example, if a comic is in the top 2% of mint numbers, or 2% lowest mint numbers in a collection. So, if you're looking at a comic that is 30,000 editions, the top 2% would be 600 mint number 600 or below. Because it's in that top 2%, we would say that that is equivalent to a 9.8 graded comic, because that's the top 2% of the CGC grading scale. And then that goes all the way down the list. This isn't necessarily to, discount, the value of comics, or say that comics without low mint numbers are not valuable. It's basically, comics that have a really high mint number, they are basically just the floor price, which is essentially the lowest possible that you could have on this grading scale. And then the mint number basically just allows it to be a little bit more valuable above that floor price based on what that mint number is. So it can become increasingly more valuable based on how low the mint is.
Yeah. And keep in mind, like even a 0.5 of Fantastic Four #1 sells for thousands of dollars. Like it's still very valuable in the physical world. And just also big, Spencer, give you some more credit here. If you notice at the very down the bottom, it says top 95% to 99.9%. Spencer had the foresight to understand that the last mint number, or possibly the last mint numbers, were going to be valuable. And I know that's been a really big topic recently, but Spencer's been talking about this for months. And especially like he told me from the very beginning, top 5% of the collection, focus on the top 5 mint numbers. And what do we
2% if you can, but try to get 5%.
Yeah, 2% if you can, but top 5% minimum. And what happened recently in the Master Collector Program announcement, top 5% mint numbers, you get additional bonus points. So
you
Spencer,
get 50% more bonus points.
So if you have if you have a secret rare comic, it's a 6 points. It's 3 more points, 9 points. If you have a 5% or higher, it's wild.
And then how do you, so if I look through like my mints, or if I'm looking to really, go heavy into like the lowest mint on a comic, but I want to make sure that I'm having it kind of compared to like its higher value, because the edition numbers are kind of all over the place on different rarities. Do you just have to kind of see what's posted out there, or how do you understand what the lowest edition number is, like say a secret rare of a comic?
So this information is, Spencer, you got this. You got this.
Sure. So I would say that like each rarity has its own price floor, right? Because they're all independent varieties or independent variants, and I view them all as completely separate assets. They all have their own price floor. So you have that, and then on top of that, you layer in the mint numbers. So the mint numbers are of course they're spread out across all rarities. So we think that it's actually even more significant. So like if you have a secret rare or an ultra rare that's a super low mint, there's only going to be maybe 4 or 5 of them that are in that top 2% or whatever it is. So, we're not necessarily looking at top 5% or top 2% within just that variant. For this, we're actually looking at top 2% within the entire collection, because the mint numbers are spread out throughout.
So Taps, this is a good example. This is what keeps me up at night. So if you look at Fantastic Four #5, there's less than 2,000 total editions on the CGC census. A 9.6 is the highest grade on the CGC census. There's no 9.8s in existence currently. But as a 9.6, there's only 3. There's only 3, and they've never been sold. They've never been sold before. It's estimated that the comic could sell for $500,000, or I think $500,000. But myself and a lot of my mentors I've talked to, had deep conversations about this. They all believe it's going to go way past $1 million if it ever sells. If one of the 3 ever sell. So here's the cool debate here. If you have a sub 300 Fantastic Four 5, that puts it in the top 1% of the collection as a 9.9, a secret rare. Does that mean that it could be worth more than that 9.6?
That's where I was hoping you're going with this.
And that's what I just like think about that all the time.
So you could have something in digital form that has a higher grade than something that actually is existing or is at least known about in the physical world. Right.
Exactly,
so you technically have something that's new or different in the NFT form. But I think this is brilliant. I love how you guys built this and laid it out. It makes sense to me. since Veve has the data, have you guys approached them about this, or like why haven't they, in your opinion, implemented some kind of grading scale system like this besides just the FA and FE in addition numbers?
Yeah, I mean,
it speaks to comic collectors, right? Like you guys understand the grade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that they want the community to come up with their own solutions to be able to, and because like they're creating the products, but it's really up to the collectors to decide what's valuable. So I don't think they necessarily want to dictate a system and say this is what's valuable, this isn't. I think they prefer the community to kind of come up with that organically, and figure it out themselves. Yeah.
And I will say that the system that they created a lot of options. Mm-hmm. So this, people have different opinions about different things, and it's exciting because I think it's all going in one direction. And it's going to be exciting to see where it all goes. And I think the biggest thing too, Taps, is tracking past sales. Because like there's websites like Go Collect where you can track past sales of physical comic books. So that helps you understand the value or the increase in value, right? So when this information becomes public on Immutable, when we officially migrate over to Ethereum from Immutable X, this should all be public information. So we'll have access to this information, and people are going to probably create websites to help us understand the value, help us understand the sales. So we can be able to have a bit clearer vision of where this is all going.
Yeah. So something else I wanted to add here while we have this graphic up is the reason that we actually lined it up to the CGC grading scale like we did is because, one of our goals in creating this podcast is we really want to bring the physical collectors into the digital space, and likewise bring the digital collectors into the physical comic space. And we think that this is something that the physical collectors are just really going to understand, and it's going to resonate with them. And because of that, we think that this is kind of like the system that will, help bring them into the space. And once they do, it'll help them understand it better and, help inform their decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, like this comic book, right? I mean, they're really the only thing at the end of the day, it's encapsulated, and it'll always retain this number unless that comes out of the case. So at the end of the day, the only thing that differentiates the value is the number. And that's why comic collectors, I think, are going to understand that connection. They're going to get that. And that's why it's so significant to us, at least.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. And I think that's a great way of looking at it, because as you said, Spencer, like they speak this language, and it's going to make sense to them, and it's going to give a little more validity to like them jumping into like a new space like NFTs. And so I think what you guys created is brilliant. And Harris asks, shouldn't you consider the mint numbers available to the public for these, since Veve holds, they don't hold 500 for every drop, but they hold X amount. So do you guys consider the fact that the first 40 to 100 or whatever are held?
Yeah. So I guess my thoughts on that are, eventually most of these that are held by Veve or held by the licensor, eventually I think these will be released to the public. Over time, I think some of these will be, either given away in giveaways, or, Veve or the licensor might decide just to sell them, just to be able to get some more liquidity or whatever. I mean, I don't think that these are going to stay out of circulation forever. So that's why we definitely want to make sure that those are included in our system. But for like the MCP, I know they said that the top 5% is the top 5% that you get the extra bonus for is for anything. It's only for the comics that are within circulation. So it doesn't include what's been taken out of circulation by Veve.
And collectibles.
And collectibles too. Yeah.
But also, I think they're going to use a lot of the low mint collectibles that are in their vault. I think they're also going to be probably building a museum. Probably going to have their own museum as well. It's going to be huge.
That goes into my next question actually really well. Is like, I remember when we were able to read them in AR, and like everyone was really stoked, and we got like the tilt feature. But besides reading them, what further utility could you see with comics into Veve, whether it's in the Veveverse, like I look forward to seeing the Comics and Crypto comic shop and like laying them out for display, but also like you said, like maybe like a museum, or even the ability for digital signatures. Like, what are your thoughts on added utility that could come to the comics to build further value once more comes with Veve?
So Spencer, before you answer that, I just want to say really quick, the giveaway. So Spencer's been talking about that for a while, that he thinks a lot of the not a lot, but a few of the collectibles that are in the vault are going to be given away as prizes. We already saw that with Slimer at number 40. It was released to the community. So there's the answer to that. Yeah. But go ahead. Sorry.
You're good. Yeah. I mean, the cool thing about NFTs is that you can build pretty much any utility that you can think of into these things. If you can think of it and build in a digital space, you can make it happen. But so outside of reading them, I think displaying them will obviously be a big portion. So people have they're kind of like their house in the Veveverse on their land, and you'll be able to display your comics on the wall, just like Sean has has comics displayed on the wall in his house. I think people will be able to put them in museums and show them off. I think renting will be an interesting piece. So I think you'll be able to rent out collectibles to other people in the Veveverse. So if somebody's having a party or something like that, maybe you could rent out, a 1901 Walt statue, which is, the super significant year for Walt. You could, basically rent that out at the party and have it, on display. So I think something like that could be really cool. And Sean, could you share, you said one of your friends is trying to build a hoverboard shop.
Oh no. So, right? So there's somebody who bought a ton of hoverboards, like 200 or 300 hoverboards. And he plans to create a rental shop in the Veveverse. So this was like back when the hoverboards were released, which is crazy because he bought 200 of those at $11 each. You already 10 to 15x your investment. Yeah. So that alone, you crushed it, dude. And now he wants to open up a rental shop in the Veveverse. But also comic books too will be huge for the specific mint numbers dedicated to the comics release. Will also be very significant as well. I've been lucky enough to actually meet people who've contacted me about it. And it's super rad. I'm told them hold on tight to that comic. Do not sell it because there could be a lot of opportunity in the metaverse for rentals. For sure.
Yeah.
Especially because I think I can't remember if it was part of MCP Pro or one of the different staking tiers. I think it was where they said you can project your edition number next to the collectible, which would make sense not just in your vault for flexing, but also in the Veveverse, kind of like you just said, Spencer, having that 1901 Walt in the middle of your party, that is a big flex, a big look at how legit I am as a collector. Come check out my spot. And then I also think of the hoverboard thing. I mean, there's gonna be people who have been stacking up DeLoreans and things like that because we know there's gonna be racing coming, and they're gonna have their own dealership, salesmen come out and slap in the car, little things like that. But one utility that I feel like you guys have to be excited for, and we've already seen it have an effect. And that is when you look at the Matt Groening signature at the bottom of Homer and the skateboard, they've held value really, really well. I think they'd be a lot less if they didn't have that. And it shows just the power of a signature on a collectible, which we've seen in the physical world, which I got to show this. Your Marvel poster signed by some of the greatest.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, there's a few VV creators on there, including Jim Lee, who did the Harley Quinn and Joker. Donny Cates is on there, who did the story and artwork for Thor 13. Thanos 13, the first appearance of the Cosmic Ghost Rider.
Rob Liefeld.
Rob Liefeld's on there, which is cool. We had a cool story about that. We'll get into in a sec.
Yeah, creator of Deadpool.
Yeah, but what's really cool is Stanley. So Stanley was the first person to ever sign it. He's the bottom right corner on the L. Right there. He was the first person to ever sign it. And he passed away, I think, 6 months later. Oh. It was really special meeting that guy. Really, really cool dude. Really cool dude. And Sam De La Rosa's on there, and Mike Zeck, and John Beatty, and Jim Shooter, Bill Stankiewicz, James Tynan down at the bottom left corner right there. He's the creator of Something Is Killing the Children. He actually worked for Marvel for a little bit as well. Super rad meeting that guy. That guy was awesome. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun bringing this around and meeting people and showing them and seeing them get excited about it too, which is really, really, really cool.
Yeah. And with the physical comics, if they're signed, do they have higher value 95% of the time?
Yeah.
So this right here, definitely. It also depends who signs it, but this one right here, I consider is one of my most valuable comics because it's signed by 5 legends, and 3 of them have passed away, including Stan Lee. So this is the giant size X-Men. This is the first appearance of Nightcrawler and Storm. This is considered one of the biggest Bronze Age key books. And I'm more than confident we'll eventually see this on VV as well.
Yeah.
But Herb Trimp and Len Wein also signed it, who created Wolverine. And it's just I can't sell this and buy it again. I've never seen a comic with this many signatures on it. And Roy Thomas signed it too, and Chris Claremont. So yeah, this is one of my favorites by far. It's something I want to give to my kids one day. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I think that's a whole different added value that a lot of people aren't considering is when digital signatures do come in, it's probably event based or whatever, hey,
you'll go to comic book conventions. Yeah.
Yep. And then all right, I've got a Todd McFarlane. I'm going to have, one or all my Todd signed or whatever. And you can only do so if you're at that location. And so now you have, however many thousands of Todds, but now you have an added tier of how many are signed, right?
Exactly.
How many Marvel number 1s are signed by 1, 2, 3 artists or however many worked on it. Right. So when I think about the fandom and like getting things signed. Like I have my Veve light signed by the Veve team, like things like that. Like
Yeah.
it shows the value just by an added feature like this, and getting it digitally signed that is directly in the blockchain and shows that speaks volumes that there's still a whole nother level coming to our collectibles when this feature is enabled.
And you know what's interesting too, Taps, is that there's a lot of personal preference in physical collecting as well. Like I know a really big, I would consider him a whale comic collector. He has an insane collection. He doesn't collect signatures on his comics. He only wants clean covers, and he only wants white pages, which means it's the cleanest cover you can get. But a majority of people, I would say, love signed covers.
But some people actually really care about. Some people actually really care about the placement of the signature on the cover as well. So if it's a poorly placed signature, somebody might not buy it compared to having it in a more favorable place on the cover. Yeah,
I couldn't imagine asking like a very, very famous artist to be like, "Hey, only sign right here," and then they're just be like,
"Taps." But I mean, you have to do it sometimes because, like Stan Lee, I mean, he was just like constantly just signing one after the other, so he's not really paying attention, right? So I saw a comic of Fantastic 452, which is the first appearance of Black Panther, a very valuable comic. He signed over his face, and it was like a 9.2 grade. I mean, this is like a 7, like worth thousands of dollars, but the guy, he's probably gonna have a hard time selling it for what he wants for it, what he should get for it, because it's signed right over a character's face, man. It's like, it breaks my heart. But but signature placement is huge. Yeah.
We've got a super chat from Lori. Buy which common, Marvel #1 or Avengers #8?
If you're talking about Marvel, I'm assuming she's talking about Marvel Comics #1. No question. Marvel Comics #1. Yeah.
Definitely.
I don't think there's any debate. Yeah, definitely, Lori.
What if it's the other Marvel one? Avengers #8?
Oh, Avengers 8. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you for the super chat, Lori. Thank you for the super
Lori.
chat, Harris. Appreciate you. Great stuff.
At Taps, can we keep going on the some of the utility stuff, because I know there's some things that we didn't cover there. So we talked about this a little bit before, but I think they're going to do burn drops with these, where you'll be able to, let's say, burn 5 Marvel Comics #1 and then get a new variant cover for it, or get something else. I think a lot of these comics kind of to simulate the real world, the way that physical comics deteriorate and some are just lost to time. I think that's gonna be simulated through these burn drops, where you're gonna be able to burn a certain number of comics or a combination of comics in order to get a new collectible, which will make the original ones way more scarce over time.
Could you imagine how rare and just how difficult that would be to do, to say, I'm gonna burn 5 Marvel Comics #1s? Like that'll definitely. And do you think then, if that did happen, would it only be then tied to commons, or do you think someone would be crazy enough to burn like 5 rares or 5 ultra rares?
They would probably be pretty specific about it. They would probably say like, you only burn the commons, or only burn rares, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or one of each, or however they decide to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And the real life utility is just, I think it's going to be across the board, and we're going to see a lot for, I personally think we're going to see it for the golden moments as well. And we've already seen it with the golden moments, but the wall statue specifically, I think, is going to be tied. This is speculation on my part, only me, but I think it's going to be tied to the park. I think they're going to see some real life utility in the park for sure.
Yeah, like you get like a free like for life season ticket for Disneyland.
Absolutely.
For if you,
absolutely. Or like
Club 33. Just like a year, like an annual pass, or like you said Club 33.
Yeah. I mean that would add. I mean, if they allowed people, if you own the entire set or even just the wall statue, and said you now have access to Club 33. I mean, so for anyone who doesn't know what Club 33 is, it's a very, very, very it's a club at Disneyland. It's costs $30,000 to join and $15,000 annually, additional annually. And there's a 14-year waiting list to join the club. It's almost impossible to get into. So if they added that, this is purely speculation, but if they did, man, it would be a $100K floor overnight. The wall statues easily.
And you know how you make that not speculation? There's already been people who've done this with like their own businesses, but if or anyone knows, whoever the owner of Club 33 is of that specific restaurant, message them, get them into Veve Collectibles, and be like, hey, like if you have a wall, maybe it's only like a 1 year, like you get a bump up, because that wait list is 14 years long. Like my buddy went, and he was on it a couple of years back, and he was like 4 years waitlist. Now it keeps growing. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and that's a big reason, Taps, why Yeah, sorry, Spencer. Go
Oh
ahead.
no, sorry. I was going to say, I really like the point you brought up there. I think that's going to be a really cool component of utilities, kind of like grassroots community utility, where people within the community basically decide to, whatever, you get a discount at my business for owning X collectible or whatever. I think somebody in the HT3 Discord, like the Holy Trinity 3 Discord, said, I think they gave 20% off at their spa if you own the Secret Rare Spidey or something like that. So I think that's a really exciting utility that, it's not something that Veve is going to create, but it's something that's going to be more grassroots through the community.
Yeah. And then to flip that, which is it's amazing, Spencer. But what's crazy about Disney and why it's so important is that that company has the resources and IP to literally make these things worth whatever they want because of what they can offer for real life utility. It's crazy. It's crazy and exciting. Yeah, it's really pumped about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in another, like in the Veve verse, I think there'll be like experiences that are going to be gated by NFTs. So like maybe there'll be like a Doctor Doom world or a Doctor Doom, something like a piece of land that's, associated with Doctor Doom, and you can only gain entrance if you own, the secret rare Fantastic Four #5.
Premier parties, events.
Stuff like that happening. I think both sponsored by Veve or by DC or, the licensor, or sponsored by the community.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like we've talked about how you could need a certain vehicle to, like, you can't go to Jurassic World if you don't have like the Jurassic Park Jeep, right? Like whenever it does come, but things like that does make sense too, where like people can create their own parties. And if you don't have the ability to show the doorman at the door that you have, a certain comic or a Todd or whatever, then you may not be able to go. The same thing from Veve. Like they have the community already built up so strong, and then it's going to keep growing. Once the Veveverse comes, they can almost reinvigorate like price action on certain collectibles just by saying you need this barrier to entry into this piece of land or to this experience in order to do so. Like we saw the prices of all the Myrmicornos shoot up because of Decon when they said, hey, if you have the Myrmicorno set, you get the little I have a couple by my light, like the little plastic ones, and like I saw the prices of Myrmicorno shoot up, like, and that was very, very minute, where like it was a select few going to a physical event. So it's little things like that when the Veveverse comes that they'll be able to actually tap back into some of these collectibles of the earlier seasons, which at that point are going to be a lot harder to get.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've even seen things like Bored Ape Yacht Club. They've had exclusive parties in the real world, like at NFT NYC this year. They had like a big boat party, and you had to show that you had either an original Bored Ape or a mutant ape in order to get into the party.
And how about those airdrops? Yeah. The airdrops that they've been giving out too. People are making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, just off the airdrops for owning that collectible, which blows my mind. I mean, I think there's going to be an airdrop, and this is again speculation, but I think there's going to be an airdrop for the golden moments. I really do. I just
if you own one of each, I think they're.
It's very possible.
I think it's going to happen.
Very possible.
Yeah, or like if you have the Batman Black and White. Like for example, I collected all 5 sets. I have all of them. So like I would love to see some kind of a reward for people that collected all those. And I think like people from Veve has said like they're actually going to continue and most likely do all. I think there's 100 of them that are in that set of the Black and White. So yeah, my plan is hopefully to get all 100 of them.
Yeah, that's gonna be crazy. That's gonna be multiple years at the same time. I'm happy to own the originals. But yeah, and then so I guess there's a lot of new people come in the community, and a lot come in, and you see more emphasis on the collectibles by nature before you see the comics, before people really understand the value behind them, how much ROI you can make on them. But I guess what are some of your overall thoughts on strategy of comic collecting in Veve, and how like they can kind of like what do they need from your personal like experience, and then how to kind of go about strategies on collecting comics that they want to make sure they hold.
Yeah. So for me, and I learned this recently from Chad from NFT Pirates. Big shout out to Chad. And he brought up a really good piece of advice. He says when he assesses a collectible or even a comic, what would the value of this collectible be as a one of one? That means basically just truly understanding what the value of this comic or this collectible or the IP would be. And if you can't answer that, that means you need to do your research. You need to put research into understanding what you're buying into. That's what the most important thing to get out of this. You just got to really understand what you're buying into, regardless of scarcity, regardless of hype. Just know what you're buying into before you're investing, because especially if you're spending a lot of money and you don't really know what you're buying, That's careless business. I mean, you really got to be careful. Just very careful and know what you're buying into. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give.
Yeah, I would say even for like the book that's being released on Thursday, it's got a super significant book, and Sean and I have discussed this, and a lot of people are probably going to be buying into that scarcity and spending a lot of money on this book because of how scarce it is. When in reality, it's a significant book, but it's not nearly as significant as some of these other grails that have been released on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think especially over time, we're going to see. I think we're going to continue seeing a lot of these really scarce collectibles. We're going to probably see one of ones. I'm pretty sure Dan and Dave have talked about that too. It's very possible. But the more scarcity we see of collectibles, it's going to come back to the IP. It's going to come back to the big Grail comics. I mean, like the one that's being dropped on Thursday, it's I think about $1,500 as a 9.8 grade, and it's a valuable Bronze Age key book. Don't get me wrong, it's a great book. But I mean, looking back over at Fantastic Four 5, it's sitting around 2,000 gems for a secret rare, and the highest grade as a 9.6 could go for over $1 million. So, and it's a very scarce book in the physical world. So it's like, supply and demand. I mean, look at the Willie, the Steamboat Willie statues. Those crush the supply and demand theory.
Yeah,
it's all about popularity. That's really what it comes down to. It's popularity.
That's a really, really good point. Like, we've definitely seen where the edition size is no longer the elephant in the room, right? Where we've seen it's the popularity, it's the immortalization of the character, the brand. It's like, if it's the first of it, like a lot of that has a lot more weight in holding value in Veve. And like, I immediately think of like you said, like the Steamboat Willie, like the things that are going to hold value the most. But if it is the one thing I also consider is if it's a super low edition, right? Because like when you think about the popularity, like but versus edition, like the the secret rare animated Loki is so cheap compared to how little editions it is. And it's like an FA and it's animated, but not as many people understand Loki, or not everyone watched the Loki series. So, and it's an alligator versus like the actual Loki itself. So it doesn't have as much value, like bigger versus some of the other things. But the piece that I always consider too is if it's a super low edition, there are constantly, we've seen whale manipulation on the prices of the lowest editions. If you look at the Donnies, if you look at the golden tickets, which I don't think one has ever been sold because they've just been kind of fluctuating. Yeah. Like that's the one side that I wonder if it's just so low on edition number, can it be manipulated over the fact that it is not a popular comic or character?
Yeah, I mean, if it's super low, like a Donnie, I think then it just becomes a status symbol, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of is independent of the way we view everything else.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then last questions, and I guess we'll take like a question or two from the community and then wrap this thing up. But overall thoughts, you guys are my last interview of the year, which again, thank you so much for this. I'm happy to have you guys on and drop a lot of this knowledge that I don't understand myself. But looking into 2022, what are your overall thoughts on Veve as a whole, Omi as a whole, and what we can see with the comic space on Veve?
Sean, you want to take it?
Man, there's just so much coming. There's so much coming. So I'm trying to, what am I most excited about? I mean, I know they just took a poll today about it on Twitter.
That poll kills me that people are choosing brands over verticals. I'm like, we have so many brands we've already had announced that haven't come out yet. Like, let's get these verticals out. I want anime, I want sports, I want gaming.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that stuff over the next year.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very excited to see more information on the Veveverse because that's me is just it's gonna be huge. We have an opportunity to have all these licensed brands in one metaverse. That's wild. Exclusively to Veve. That's wild.
Yeah. Of anything that I could invest in Veve right now, Veve Land is my 100% top priority. Like hands down. Yeah.
And
that's the only key. Like, they're so smart tying, like they've said before, and the message could always change, but they said that like the people who will have access the soonest, most likely, will be the ones who have like higher tiered rankings. So they're going to reward the collectors first and foremost on the points they've accumulated. So if you want the chance to have, first access to the Veveverse, it's going to be reflected on your collecting ability. Or if you want the ability to buy land, it's going to be most likely reflected in your collecting ability. That's going to tier into that. Like, that is a brilliant way to reward collectors no matter what happens in the crypto market, right? And like that stands out vastly compared to all the other crypto metaverses where people aren't going to be spending as much money on NFTs and other metaverses when we fall into like a financial dip, which eventually will happen, right? But collectors, financial dips happen and collectors don't sell. They just hold and then they keep buying more stuff. Like that. That's kind of what's like an added superpower of Veve and eventually the Veveverse.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you there. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions from the community?
I was gonna say a couple of the things that I'm excited for though. I think on the OMI side of things, once the migration has completed over to Mutable X, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of exchange listings. I think it's been very smart. Veve and Ecomi has held off on doing any exchange listings because it didn't really make sense for them to list a coin on GoChain on exchanges when they're just going to have to go through the whole migration process. It's just a lot of wasted work. So I think once we get that migration, we're going to start seeing some major announcements. I mean, we have Marvel, Disney, DC, Universe. Like, it's just crazy the brands that we have. So yeah, this is going to go on major exchanges like Binance and Coinbase, like very, very quickly. I think once, So and then as a result, the OMI price will fly.
A good analogy I like to use, like for the process of what's going on right now, because people are just really impatient. They're excited, but most can be impatient too. When you're editing a film in post-production, you don't start color correcting, you don't start doing visual effects and sound design until the edit is completely locked. Because if you change things and you have to do unnecessary backtracking, which costs more time, or costs more and wastes a lot of time. So that's kind of like what's going on right now. You have to first finish these steps to work on other things. So just be patient. It's gonna all work out.
Yeah, and I think MTL is also MTL and KYC is a big aspect of it as well. I think once those are rolled out, then I think it's going to be a lot more. In general, the company's more reputable. So SEC is less likely to come after them if they're then listed on major U.S. exchanges. So yeah, I think there's just a lot. There's lots to come. Lots to be excited about. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. 2022 is going to be very exciting. And a couple questions we have. These two kind of tie in together. So thanks for the questions, Stern4 and Logs. But they asked, what do you think about the value of ultra rares compared to commons? And then better to invest in low mint commons or secret rares? Not financial advice, of course. None of this is financial advice ever. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on, I guess, like the common game versus like an ultra rare or secret rare? Like stack up multiples or go with like an ultra rare or secret rare?
I mean, I think a lot of this comes down. So the commons, are they referring to like low mints or just floor commons that equal the same amount as a secret rare? Is that what they're? Low mint commons. Low mint commons, secret rare.
I guess they are different. Like one's asking low mint commons or secret rare, and then one's asking to stack commons versus ultra rares.
Cool. So the first one for the low mint and commons, and I would say that, I think it comes down to personal preference. I mean, over time, we're going to be able to tell which, the value of each one by tracking past sales, which will happen in the future. But I also think it just comes down to personal preference. I mean, people are going to appreciate and want the original covers a lot more than the secret rare covers. And they find that the lower mints are more valuable to them than the secret rares. So, yeah, I mean, time will tell. But I fully expect both to do very, very, very well. And there's plenty of room for both.
Exactly.
just like signed and unsigned comics.
Yeah, and if you have a low mint secret rare, you have the best of both worlds, and there you go. It's the best you can possibly get.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
love it. And what is the most undervalued comic in the app, in your opinions?
Spencer, you want to go first?
Maybe Fantastic Four or 5. Yeah,
you took it from me.
Yeah. So you're thinking too? Nice.
It's almost like you guys have a podcast together. So you talk about this all the time.
We've had a lot of in-depth conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited for that comic. Even right now, Fantastic Four 1 too, man. I mean, just it's the physical comics is so scarce to get for either one, and even like a 0.5 grade of either one is worth thousands of dollars. It's an incredibly valuable comic, and also that they're coming to the MCU. So there's huge upside for an already incredibly valuable comic. They're both worth millions in their highest grade. So yeah, I mean, I think they're very undervalued for that reason.
I love seeing people join in on what they think is the undervalued, but I mean, there's so many that are, right? So I mean, as a whole, like all the comics are undervalued when you think about how they're going to keep going up in value. And then when you compare them to the physical, which you guys have dropped all the knowledge on today's stream. So I think it's super valuable to kind of like look at this side of Veve, because so many people kind of forget about it. Like they all go for the drops and they all go for them. And they, you know, if I get a secret rare yay, if I get an ultra rare yay, I either flip it immediately or I'm holding on to it. But the people who are holding are the ones who really understand the physical comic world and then believe in the digital collectible NFT comic world that Veve is creating. So I think it's really easy to forget about this entire side as a long hold and not just a quick flip. And so that's why I thought it was so important to have you guys on the stream to really help educate everyone. And you know, some of the comments in here have been fantastic. And so, you know, thanks for everyone for hopping in the stream. Please hit that like button so that way others people can hop on and watch this, you know, if the time didn't work out for them. But this has been an awesome conversation,
so much
guys.
fun. So much fun, Taps. And I just want to say too that our ideas and philosophy is you know, it's not set in stone. It's not the only way this is going to work out. There's a lot of awesome ideas out there. We're just one of a few. So if you like like our concepts and ideas, awesome. If it works for you, great. But everyone should have their own strategy for collecting and investing. So it's very important.
Yeah. Also want to give a huge shout out to Cherry Charts. Because Brendan Cherry, he's helped us develop a lot of our materials and has helped us get a lot of the data behind the stuff that we've done. So
especially our market caps.
I was say, I think Cherry Charts right here.
Yeah, there you go.
Big shout out to Brendan, man. He's an awesome guy, has incredible content. Definitely check out his website. He's a wonderful, wonderful dude. Really, 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 really good person. And has great content.
I would echo that as well. I've used Cherry Charts quite a bit. You know, I use Ecomi Wiki quite a bit, but Cherry Charts has been absolutely fantastic. But also, just again, everyone, if you do not follow Comics and Crypto, I would add them on Twitter, where you can see there's Sean again. Where you can go directly into their, I mean, you can go to their link tree and see all of these different graphs and things that they've pulled up today. Use them at your resource, and they do update them. And of course, make sure you subscribe to their channel, click that notification bell, and so on and so forth. I've put all the details of their content in the details of this video. But yeah, guys, I mean, this has been an awesome chat. And is there any other like little farewell tips and tricks or anything that you guys want to kind of throw out to the community?
If you have any questions at all, contact us. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Instagram actually is a bit, it's a lot of spam in there. So like if anyone's trying to reach out to us via Instagram, I apologize. It's just like when they know you're a crypto project, you just get spammed with messages. So Twitter and Facebook, and also our email, comicsandcryptopodcast@gmail.com. Contact us. We respond.
Awesome. Well, Sean, Spencer, it's been amazing. Thanks everyone for hopping in the chat, and I'll see you guys in the new year.
Really appreciate it, Taps.
Thanks
for having us.
Of course. Take care, guys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.